Start the Bible study, and my voice is a little bad, but can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Good. I'm getting over that cough again, and I've got my Alex at the moment. So, but we're going to go ahead and pick up then on question 65 in our workbooks from Deep Foundations. And the question is, the same question, old question. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Chicken, that's right. How do we know that? We can see that in Genesis 1:21 through 27. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Genesis 1:21 through 27. We're going to take a look at Genesis in this class, and we're going to examine why a lot of people don't believe it. Fact is that when you understand it properly, it makes a lot of sense. And it's the only thing that actually does make any sense. It's pretty hard to have a creation without a creator to start with. And we're going to look at these days, just how long were these days? And the Bible's clear about that. It doesn't say in hours or anything, but the Bible's definition of a day we're going to look at. And let's take a look first at this creation. What came first was in Genesis 1:21 through 27. Let's read that. Nice and loud.
And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly, after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw it was good. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the sea, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. And God said, Let the earth bring forth the living creatures after his kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and every kind that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw it was good. And God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the earth, of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them.
Okay, so here we have a list of various different forms of living animals, and fish, birds, ourselves as well. And we are created and to be able to reproduce after our own kind. And so the Bible's clear about that. The bearing seed, plants are bearing fruit of their own, after their own kind. So you don't find any chickens laying snake eggs, because that's not after their kind. But you will find a variety of chickens. There's all kinds of different kinds of chickens. That's after their own kind. They're all chicken kind. They're all bird kind. So there's a variety of kind, within that section. But they have a limit. They don't cross over and become a completely different kind. Like evolution would tell you that we come from monkeys. Well, a monkey is a different kind than man. We may look like a monkey. Monkey may look like us in some respects. But they are different kind. And they are not the same, never was the same. We didn't evolve from monkeys. We were created as mankind, male and female, right here it lists it. And so bottom line is God is our creator. It wasn't an accident over a long period of time. That would be impossible if you really look at the odds. And the complexity of our earth, our universe, our solar system, our atmosphere, and our own body, our eyes, how they work, our body, how it works. So there's only two ways to look at it. Either there's a creator or there's not. That makes the most sense to say, for instance, my watch didn't come together on its own. It was created by a watchmaker. We didn't come together on our own. We're created by the great creator. We call him God. And so let's take a look at how this all transpired. And we'll look at Genesis 16:1, chapter 1, verses 16 and 17. And we'll take a look at, for instance, God created, before he created all the animals, he created the earth and as well as the stars and stuff. And some things we should learn and understand and realize is God created a lot of things with maturity or time built in. When God created Eve, she wasn't a baby. She was a full-grown woman brought to Adam. Adam wasn't a baby. He was a man when he was created. A lot of these things were created not as infants, but as full-grown adults. And the same with even things like our earth and things like stars. Because, for instance, a star, when it blows up, it gets very bright. It becomes a supernova, I guess, and then it becomes an explosion and blows up. That does happen, has happened, can happen. But we wouldn't see that light, that star that got bright and was gone, for, depending on how far it was away, for a long time, hundreds of years maybe. So, because of the speed of light, there's a certain number. There's a number for, and I'm not right off the top of my head knowing what the speed of light is. It's very, very fast. But they are very far. So it still takes time from that light, from that star to get to our earth. But in the creation, it was all done in the same day. The star was created and it lit the earth. So we know that light beam between the star and the earth was created at the same time. Everything was created at that same time of creation. So God didn't have to wait for things to mature originally. He could create the earth with things built in that we assume are old when they may not be that old. He could create the solar system and stars to shine on the earth. And they were seen from the earth, even though nobody was there yet to see them, but they was able to see at nighttime the stars. And that light would not get to the earth, sometimes for a long time, but it was there that same day. So that's something to keep in mind when we look at some of these things, that they were not created as infants. We don't need a large period of time to see starlight, even though it would take that long for it now to be seen if there was a change in the atmosphere or the universe is beyond us. So keep that in mind. Let's take a look at Genesis 1:16 and 17.
God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth.
Okay, so that was all done on that day. And but let's look at the next question, question 66 in Genesis of our workbook. In Genesis, when did God begin and end the daily cycle? So, you know what I'm saying? When did the day end, which will be the next day beginning? When did that transpire?
I think it's sunset.
That's right. That's true. It's sunset. We can see that in Genesis 1:5, and it's repeated over and over. Let's go ahead and read that real quick.
Genesis what?
1:5.
And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day.
This is the first day. Evening came first. It was dark. And then God said, let there be light. And then there was light. And then at the end of the time, when it got dark again, that was the end of that first day and the beginning of the next day. So God's day begins in nighttime at sunset in our current time. And the Jewish day still does that. They go according to Genesis. A Jewish Sabbath or a Jewish Passover begins at sundown. And it still does today. It has for centuries, according to this here in Genesis. So their night is the beginning of their, in a sense, 24-hour day, and it lasts all night. Where our night is divided in half, that's why we call it midnight. It's the middle of the night is where 12 o'clock is supposed to be. That's why it's called midnight. And we start our day at midnight. And that's good to keep in mind because different gospels use different clocks. Jesus even referred to 2 different clocks sometimes. And there's a 6-hour difference during the time of Passover. It's right after the equinox when there's equal time on both sides, night and day. So here in Genesis, keep in mind the nighttime, the beginning of the nighttime is the beginning of their day. And then you got all night, and then you'll have all day, just like Jesus was all night and all day in the tomb, 3 of them. And we proved that, and the Bible is very clear about that. But we won't get into that right now, but to keep in mind, that starts right here. God established that. So, next question, question 67. What day did God create our 24-hour lunar day? What day of creation was that created?
I think the 4th day.
That's right. It was the 4th day. And let's go ahead and read that in Genesis 1, 14 through 19. So before this, it wasn't at sundown. It was at night, because there was no sun. So God didn't create the sun yet, or the stars. There was just darkness, and there was just light. So there was a difference here. So we can't really use the sun, a sundial, or a clock to measure days before this right here, because God was using a different time frame. He was using sundown, or not sundown, but nighttime, because sundown didn't happen until the 4th day. And we'll see that here listed. So on the 4th day, that's when we began our 24-hour lunar day. So let's look at Genesis 1, 14 through 19. Go ahead and read that.
Then God said, let lights appear in the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them be signs to mark the seasons, day and years. Let these lights in the sky shine down on the earth. And that is what happened. God made 2 great lights, the larger one to govern the day, and the smaller one to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set these lights in the sky to light the earth, to govern the day and night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening passed, and the morning came, marking the 4th day.
So that was the 4th day when the sun was created, and it started with the evening and morning. And so basically, that began our 24-hour day, our lunar day. But let me ask you in question number 68 in the workbook, is an exception to the 24-hour lunar day. Now, we're not talking about our clock here, watch. We're talking about God's clock, which is light and darkness. So is there exception on God's clock to the lunar day being 24 hours?
Isn't there something in the Bible about a battle and
Yeah.
they needed like...
Now they need, that's a special exception. And we're going to get into that a little bit with Joshua. We're going to look that up a little bit as we get to that. But yeah, Joshua did have it pause. So there was a miracle extending the lunar day at that point. There's actually another exception in the Bible. It's a specific daily exception. And that was during Hezekiah's life. And God made the sun go backwards on the sundial, 10 degrees, whatever time that would be. So that extended the lunar day that day also. So there's a couple exceptions in the Bible that God can do a miracle to extend a lunar day. He has done that twice in the past, but I'm talking about something more natural. Today is their exception to the lunar day. Today.
Could it be like in northern Alaska when they have, I guess in northern Alaska, I think I read something where because of the tilt of the earth or something, it's longer. The lunar day is actually longer.
That's exactly right, and that is true. And that, as a matter of fact, in Barrow, Alaska, at the north end of Alaska, a day could last 80 the lunar day could last 80 days until the sun goes down. They just see the sun spiraling above them, more or less, but they don't have any sun down where it's nighttime for months. So even today, the lunar day is not necessarily 24 hours if you're in the far north, like in Alaska. And so that's something else to keep in mind. So God is not bound by our 24-hour clock when he says a day. He's got his own day, his own time, and he expressed it clearly over and over. It is nightfall. That is the beginning of his day, and that is the end of the day. And we already know that that can be miraculously expanded, whether you believe it or not in the Bible, it's listed a couple times, but it also can be naturally expanded. As we know today, we can just go to Alaska and find that the lunar day doesn't end for days and days and days You could have 80 days in a row of daylight until the sun finally completely actually sets, and then you have night. And the nights could be very long as well. But the bottom line is that, so you could have a long day without having a problem in Genesis. So let's go ahead and take a look at, we're going to look at the sixth day. So what happened to the earth is basically, it's not quite the same as it was back then. For us to go to Alaska to have that kind of a lunar day, we would be freezing unless we dress for it. It's very cold up there. But during creation, it wasn't necessarily cold if you wanted to have a lunar day naturally, like it is in Alaska. You could have a lunar day like it is in Alaska and still be very comfortable. And because back then, the earth was like a greenhouse. It had a water canopy around it, like our ozone canopy is now. And it shielded the sun rays, but it also acted like a greenhouse to keep the earth more moderate instead of extreme temperatures between north and south and various things like that from everything that I'm told, and it does make sense to me. So bottom line is this water canopy, quite thick, would screen the light, even though light could get through it. And even though, fact is, it would screen some of the heating and cooling effects. So bottom line is we see this in Genesis 1, 7, and 8, and during creation. So let's take a look at that real quick before we go further on the sixth day of creation when man was created, and animals as well, the land-bearing animals, or land-dwelling animals. Let's take a look at the atmosphere in which they were created in. Genesis 1, 7, and 8. Let's go ahead and read that.
And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day.
So he divided the waters. And you notice from the waters above, from the waters below. The waters above he called heaven. So there are waters in the heaven. This would be the first heaven, moving into the second heaven, which is where our ozone layer is. It's at the end of the first heaven, and at the beginning of the second heaven, which is outer space, and the third heaven encompasses everything, which is where God is. But when he created these first two heavens, where the stars are and where our planet is. But the bottom line is, that's called heaven, first heaven, where the water canopy was. And a lot of people don't understand, but this changed in Noah's flood. Let's take a look at Genesis 7, 11, and 12. So this vapor canopy, even though you might have cooler temperatures in some places than others, bottom line, it wasn't extreme like it is now. So dispersed things better. Excuse me. So let's take a look at what happened to this water canopy. The earth has been changed several times in many ways since it was created. And take a look at this, Genesis 7, 11, and 12. Let's go ahead and read that.
In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. And the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights.
Okay, before that, go ahead, Scotty.
Keep going.
Was that the end of verse 12?
Oh, yes, that was the end of
Then,
verse 12.
yeah, that's good. And so basically what you had there was rain. It didn't actually rain. The Bible says a mist came up and watered the garden, sort of like a greenhouse again with the misty stuff and the dew in the morning and stuff. But the bottom line is here it started raining, monsoon rains. It wasn't just a sprinkly rain. It was the heavens opening up and coming down with all this water. So much water that it covered Mount Ararat, a very high mountain, because that's where they find Noah's Ark. And it's been pretty well documented now. It's hard to get to because of the snow and ice and different things, but they have found it. Different people, there's actually a city that makes it common, not a city, but a small town, village at the bottom of the mountain, where they actually have some artifacts and or say that they've had some things that they peeled off the Ark. And I've seen some video of people going to the Ark, but it's very hard to find because it's usually covered with ice and stuff. Bottom line is, this water, with so much water, the deeps came up and the water canopy came down and flooded the earth, and then it gathered and where the oceans are now. And so basically the earth was changed, and that's what our ozone layer began, being our protection from the sun. Not as good a protection, but that began the ice age. The ice age in the far north. It began at Noah's flood, and the extreme temperatures began. And things started changing at that point. Now Mount Ararat may not have been a frosty peak at the time. Noah landed there, water's receding, different things were transpiring. But the bottom line, in the end, all that water encompassed a lot, and the glaciers were formed at that time, after that time, and the ice caps and stuff. And so that's began the ice age that people talk about. And and there's actually animals that were frozen during that time. We find mammoths and stuff like that they've recovered that are frozen in water that still have their hides on. So anyways, bottom line is not to get into all that atmosphere stuff, but to realize that God's situation here with a day could be much longer than 24 hours, because it doesn't really, and it never really made sense to me that all the things that happened in Genesis describing the day 6 when we were created could have happened in 12 hours. You know, that's a short amount of time to have what they listed here, and it's listed here. We won't go into it because there's so much to read, but it starts in Genesis 1:24 through 31, and then it elaborates what goes in on that 6th day in Genesis 2:7 through 8, and Genesis 2:15 through 23. And just to give you that, because we don't have the time, we'd be out of time if we read all that for this class. But what you can read it for yourself there, Genesis 1 and 2 on the 6th day, that God created animals, then he created man, Adam, out of the dust of the ground. Animals are created out of the dust of the ground. That's what sustains us, is the dust of the ground, which sustains our body. And he breathed into him a spirit, and God sustains us spiritually. But bottom line is, he was created. After he was created, he was fellowship with God, and God brought all these animals to them, to Adam. And no doubt it appears that he brought them 2 by 2 because God created them in pairs. There's no sense in having just a male animal or just a female animal, unless she's already pregnant maybe. But the bottom line, God created them in pairs, just like he led them into Noah's Ark in pairs to recreate, or reproduce in this case, the population of the earth. So bottom line is, here Adam's noticing that everybody's got 2s, and he's bringing all these animals to Adam to name them on the same day. That he was created, they were created, they created first, and he was created. Then he names them, and it wasn't every single animal you can imagine probably. It was like each representation of that species. So here's this species, here's that species. What do you call it? I call it a cat. What do you call that? I call it a dog. Well, he didn't bring wolves and coyotes, and he didn't bring all of them different kinds of wild and tame dogs to him. He brought a single pair of dogs. So bottom line is, and Adam named them. After that, on the same day, Adam went to sleep. And maybe he was tired, and maybe God put him to sleep. God put him to sleep in the sense, or had him go to sleep, or it was time for him to sleep, whatever the case was, because it was probably much longer even by then than 24 hours. As we know, a day could last for months. So during this time frame, it could have been months and still daytime. And so bottom line is, he put him to sleep, and then he made woman, and he brought her to man. And that happened the same day. And Adam named her woman. And so basically they had fellowship in a sense that basically God, the woman, and the man were united and fellowship. Now, I'm not saying that anything was beyond that, but bottom line is they was actually acquainted with each other, they was introduced to each other, and that all happened that same day of creation. Now, that's a lot of things that happen if you look at that in 12 hours. I mean, just naming all the animals in 12 hours would be a feat. But I think if you have months, not such a big deal. And so if we look at that, the way God wrote it, the way God expressed it, then the 6 days of creation makes a lot of sense. They don't have to be 24-hour days, as some people think. They think, well, that's just it. I believe the Bible is 24 hours, and it could happen in 24 hours. God can do miracles. God can stop time like he did with Joshua. But that's really not 24 hours. He can accelerate, activities within the 24 hours. So you named all the animals in 10 minutes. Good deal. So, but I don't think God rushes through these things because he's got himself a natural window where the sun didn't go down. It doesn't go down today in certain areas. So it didn't go down at that time until everything was done, that it was concluded, and the night came. So just keeping that in mind, we can see that God has, in his word, an ability to have plenty of time to do everything he said. And maybe we'll take a quick look at Joshua 10, as Marcia brought up. Joshua 10, 12 through 13. And we'll see that even though God had an availability to longer than a 24-hour day naturally, just as we do today, supernaturally, that doesn't bind him, or he's not bound by those things. He could just stop the sun if he wanted to. Now that's unnatural. It can't be done without a miracle. Because if you stop the rotation of the earth, or you stop whatever the case is, the rotation around the sun, or whatever the case is, things change, things go out of balance, so God's able to freeze that time, and but that is a miracle. That's not natural, and it doesn't even make sense if you're a scientist. It's impossible, but yet it happened, because God can do the impossible. Let's take a look at Genesis 10, 12 through 13.
Genesis?
Oh, I'm sorry, Joshua. We're so much in Genesis. But now let's take a look at Joshua 10, 12 through 13.
On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, O sun, stand still over Gideon. O moon, over the valley of Ozone.
Yeah, it's hard to pronounce those old names.
So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies. As it is written in the book of Jashar, the sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day.
So here we have a 24-hour day, instead of a full day almost, it became a 48-hour day because of special circumstances. And so basically, that was a miracle. And, whatever you say, God can do things like that if he wants to. He overrides natural cause and effects, and if he wants to. But generally speaking, he's created cause and effect, seed time and harvest, and those things happen without his special intervention. When Jesus walked on the water, that's not natural. Peter walked on the water, that's not natural. God can supersede any and every natural law if he shows truths, if it's to his thinking that it would help the situation. So God's not bound by our laws of natural situations, but they do actually rule our lives. If I jump out of an airplane, I can't depend on God to rescue me because I violate the law of gravity. Unless I have a parachute and I'm prepared for that sort of thing. But if I'm not prepared and I just like a fool jump out, then God doesn't have to push me down. Fact is, laws from creation pushes me down. And I violated those laws and I'll crash to the ground. Some people have lived through such things, and they went through trees to slow down the crash, and they survived. But it's not a good idea to violate the laws of natural situations. Law of seed time and harvest, something God actually established in the beginning. And God reformed that in the New Testament. He says, what you sow, you're going to reap. So that's something that's established in the beginning that God doesn't have to intervene and do anything about. Now, he can increase the harvest or reduce the harvest, but what we sow, we're going to reap. If I sow corn, I can't expect to reap wheat. And if I don't sow anything in my field and just let it go wild, I can expect what I've not sown to produce weeds. And so basically what happens is there's an enemy out there. He's always sowing seed. He knows the laws of seed time and harvest as well. It's the devil, and he's sowing seed into our hearts. He's sowing seed into our lives that is evil, the weed seeds. We have to uproot those things. We have to deny those things. They're natural things that happen. He knows what they can naturally affect. But God can override those things no matter what. But we have to be wise in our decisions, and we have to be wise and realize in our situations and how things work. Let's take a look at one more thing that was mentioned. Let's look at 2 Kings 20, 10 and 11. So some things God gets blamed for. For instance, when a storm comes in, storms are natural cause and effects of our environment. And some people look at a hurricane coming in, and they call it an act of God. Job was written before Genesis, actually. Now, frame was taking place after Genesis. Moses wrote the book of Genesis after Job lived. But Job mentioned about a situation where his family was destroyed by a storm. Came in, destroyed part of his family. And the devil is listed in the New Testament as that kills, steals, and destroys. John 10:10 says that the devil or the thief came to kill, steal, and destroy. But Jesus or God came to give us life and that more abundant. So some of the things that we blame God for, evil things that happen, are natural cause and effects. And sometimes it's demonic activity. And God can override those things. But we shouldn't blame God for the evil that's in our world. God is trying to avoid that. But He wants us, we wanted to know evil from the beginning. And we're learning it. The knowledge of good and evil is what we're learning. So if we removed all the evil out of the world, then the tree that they violated and ate from, that God didn't want them to eat from, we wouldn't understand. But we're going to understand evil by the end of this life. And others beyond this life will understand evil as well by learning from us as an example. So there's a reason for evil. It's for us to learn that it's bad. Evil's bad, God is good. The devil's bad, God is good. Evil things come from the devil. Good things come from God. When we learn that, we've gone a long way towards wisdom and understand what's going on in our world. But let's take a look at how God overrides some of these situations, these natural things that the environment does naturally, seed time and harvest, and the things the devil does, because he's here roaming the place, seeking who he can devour, and all his demonic forces as well. And so bottom line is God can override these things, but we have to actually be close to God and walking in his plans and purposes and stuff for him to act on our behalf in those situations, or have somebody praying for us in a very special way, and God will act in answer to those prayers. But let's take a look real quickly, and we're going to close with this. 2 Kings 20, 10 and 11.
Second or seven?
2 Kings. 2 Kings, chapter 20, verses 10 and 11. And this is Jehoshaphat, and he's a king of Israel. He's actually on his deathbed, and he's asking about, a sign, because he's pleaded to have a few more years. Now, he'd been better off if he actually died at that point and went to paradise, because there's a few more years that was given him. He ended up not doing so well as far as he let some people in to see his treasures, who later plundered the treasures. But nevertheless, let's take a look at the situation, the sign that he asked for, and the answer to it. 2 Kings 20, 10 and 11.
The shadow always moves forward, Hezekiah replied. So that would be easy. Make it go 10 steps backwards instead. So Isaiah the prophet asked the Lord to do this, and he caused the shadow to move 10 steps backward on the sundial of Ahaz.
Okay, so that's a sundial. It's a natural thing. This doesn't happen but by a miracle. That's the reason why, this is not a natural event. This is a special event. As Marsha mentioned, this is 1, 2, and the only 2 that's actually mentioned, where the day was expanded. The 24-hour day was expanded miraculously by God, personal intervention on it. One day is for Joshua, and it ended up being almost a 2-day day. This day, I don't know how many degrees, I don't know how long that would be in hours, but it's expanded by a number of, apparently, hours, because it went backwards on the sundial. and it has to continue to go forward then, and continue to stay till the end of the day. So the first days of creation were not 24-hour days. You can almost guarantee that. First days of creation were times frames between night and the concluding following night. We include night first and then day. And if we keep that in mind, we'll see things in the New Testament more clearly when it comes to days that are referred to as far as Jesus' crucifixion, resurrection, different things. When the Jewish clock actually starts and stops as opposed to our clock, and they do use both clocks at that point in the Gospels for different accounts. And also, fact is, Genesis can easily be understood using that time frame. God's not limited by a 24-hour day. He never has been, and he never will be. Fact is, the only alternative to God creating these things in his time frame, which makes a lot of sense. There was 6 separate events, and concluded by the night, and would be the only alternative to having a creator is not having a creator. And that's what's taught in our public schools. There's no creator. You're an accident. You're created by a series of accidents over a long period of time. And if you look at it, most of what they use to try to prove that has been doctored, and there is no proof of it. Bottom line, they use some fossils and claim that they're millions of years old, and claim that this monkey was once going to be a man eventually. And they also claim that life came from an explosion of nothing. And basically, it doesn't make sense if you look at evolution closely, even if you just think about the theory, and that's all it is a theory. It's not science. Science can be proven. You cannot prove this theory of evolution and not having a creator. So, bottom line is, if you believe evolution, look closely into why you believe it. Usually it's because of ignorance. You're just trusting the people and scientists and people that basically know more in colleges than we do in some ways, know somehow the facts. And they don't want to acknowledge that there is a creator, because then there must be a reason for the creation. And if there's a reason for the creation, and if there's a creator, maybe there'll be a judgment day. And that is all facts in the Bible. There is a creator, there's a reason for his creation, and there is a judgment day where all things will be held accountable, all people will be held accountable. But if we're created from animals, there is no accountability. It's just a fact of, in their thinking, the survival of the fittest. So no matter how you survive, if you're a survivor, you're a winner, and that's all you try to do, is basically beat down other people, or kill, steal, and destroy to get your way so that you survive, because that's how evolution works. So it's a bad teaching. It's a teaching our kids are animals, so they're going to act like animals. But if they teach accountability and judgment, the fact is that God is real, we'd have a different kind of society. And the fact is, those are the facts. And it's the greatest deception in our time is evolution, denying Genesis 1 and 2. Now, I've even heard Christians say that they believe in evolution, but God used evolution somehow. Well, then they disbelieve the Bible, and they may be Christians, and they may actually be going to heaven. They may believe that God was involved in creation, somehow using evolution, but God didn't use evolution as they teach it at all. Now, there may have been a big explosion in the beginning. That's not contrary to the Bible. And God says, let there be light. Well, that sounds like an explosion of light. And then he created from there. But he didn't create one thing to lead to the next and grow from, as evolution teaches, from one species to the next. And God created each thing individually. And if there are any questions on creation or Genesis or the theory of evolution that anybody wants to bring up or anything like that? Okay, so if you look into it, evolution basically is impossible. You can't have it naturally come together with the precision that we have for life. And you'd have to have male and female come together at the same time, otherwise you can't have a reproduction. So it just doesn't make sense, but people don't think it through. People just don't want to believe in God, so therefore they believe, well, I don't want to believe in God, so therefore if there's no creator, then it must be evolution. That's the only alternative, is either there is God or there's not. But it makes sense to realize there is a creator to have a creation. And that's what the Bible teaches. And this is how he did it. And he did it in 6 time frames, not 6 24-hour days. And then he rested and enjoyed it. And that's what we need to do, is enjoy God, because that's what he designed us to do. So if there's no questions, we're going to close there. Thanks for coming.